Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? Driving high will get you a DUI. And if you're wondering if law enforcement can tell you're driving high, well, everyone else can. Friends?
I can tell you drove high.
Parents?
I can tell when you drive high.
Relatives?
I can tell. You drove here high, didn't you?
So what makes you think law enforcement can't?
I can tell.
If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome into the Irish NFL show on the Believe Network, brought to you by our partner QuimBet. From time to time, we think about the success of the show 5 years running, and we always commend certain people who continuously come back to us, come back on the show. This man needs no exception. Steve Wyche from NFL Network. Steve, great to have you on. 2 weeks to the new season. It's a very exciting time for all fans.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. And you do such a great job. It is always a treat to come on. I love what you do with the fans over there, how they love the sport. So, again, thanks for having me back on.
Very interesting offseason. I'll try to capture as many teams as we can in the next 20 to 25 minutes. Dave, I'm going to kick off, if you don't mind, with a team that's very close to your heart. You obviously have a tie into the organization. That is the Atlanta Falcons. And in the last couple of hours, head coach Kevin Stefanski has confirmed that Tua will play the final preseason game. Penix isn't ready yet. He's still coming back from the injury. If you were to take a step back this offseason, you would say this team is pointing in the right direction. A new head coach, a 2-year head coach of the year. You get the Drake London contract, the Bijan contract. Still question marks on the defense. It seems like, again, it's a very winnable division in the NFC South. And yet the quarterback situation is a little bit unknown. And I haven't watched Tua in the 2 preseason games. There's not a lot of coverage to watch of him. It's quite limited. But at the same time, he hasn't been convincing. I know a number of Falcon fans that are asking the question, should we ride with Penix and see how it transpires thereafter once the season gets going? What's your overall thoughts on the feel for the Falcons as we head into the new season?
Yeah, overall, a lot of unknown, but let's stick with the quarterback situation. Yeah. The fact that Tua, a 4-year starter for the most part in Miami, has not seized this opportunity with Michael Penix unable to do 11-on-11 drills all up until this week, that's not great. I'm a little surprised by that because Tua is usually a very competitive guy. It's not like he's learning a radically new system. It's a system with some of the same principles. And I thought he'd come in like, okay, guys, let's go. Let's get this. I love Mike Penix, but he's not around. I'm going to show you I'm your guy. That's what Kyler Murray did in Minnesota, and he had J.J. McCarthy competing against him, right? And so the fact he hasn't done that yet, unless Kevin Stefanski is just playing somewhat of a game and saying, you know what, I'm at least going to give Michael Penix a chance to come off before, the injured list, which he did this week, before I name my starter, to give him some type of shot. But I think it should be somewhat alarming that Tua, again, a guy who I think has been a very good player, has not seized this opportunity. And I think that's where the fan base in Atlanta is right now as well.
Do you think there's a certain aspect of that, of the uneasiness of how his time finished in Miami, for example, like the continuous concussions? Because even that first Broncos game in the preseason, the offensive line obviously had a very difficult time as well, and they were going up against Broncos starters, so I acknowledge that. But he looked like, I wouldn't say disheveled, but he certainly looked totally off kilter in terms of what maybe we expected.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And I think that's kind of been where he has the days or the moments where he looks really good, and those moments where he just does not seem connected. And that's an issue because it's not just how you perform, it's how the other 10 guys in the huddle feel about you. And if they're like, okay, this guy's, he's not giving us our best shot to win here, that's a problem. But if they're like, okay, look, we're all working through some things, which they are. They've got to fix their right tackle situation. They've got a few things they've got to work through. But if he's holding them back and the other guys don't have faith in him, that's an issue. I don't know if that's the case. Again, maybe it's something where when he's not looked good, they're trying something that they may not normally do in the regular season, and it just kind of that happens in the preseason. But there's been nothing that I've heard from people in the building, from people around the situation, that says that Tua has come in here and just seized everything about the opportunity.
Your general thoughts on the division as a whole? It seems to be the division every year where we all suggest it's very winnable. The Bucks last year will reflect on. I think it came back even more if people had took the opportunity to watch the quarterback series with Baker Mayfield. Yeah. How many opportunities the Bucks lost out on in terms of games they, in theory and on paper, they should have won. It didn't come about. And there's, with the exception maybe of the contract situation with Baker, it looks like things are okay in Tampa. You've got a Saints team that, I wouldn't say it's the snazzy pick, but people are suggesting they're going to lead off from where they finished the season. Yeah. Kellen Moore seems to be taking the team in the right direction. I would caveat, I spoke to Jeff Duncan, who reports to the KnowAllIt.com this week, and he suggested if Shock goes down very early in the season, this team is, he didn't say doomed, but he felt like they don't have a sufficient backup to deal with that situation, and it's very much in his hands. But there's a lot of unknowns whether this team can move on from where they were at the end of last season. Do you see the Saints as a front runner, or is it still with the Bucks to win?
I like the Saints. The Bucks are still the team to beat because of Baker. He's going to be motivated because they didn't get a deal done by his self-imposed deadline. But I think overall they've got a culture in Tampa where they expect to win. No other team in that division has that type of culture. And that's why we say it's up for grabs every year. However, we just saw the Bucks absolutely fade in the back half of the season last year. Can they get over some of that? They've replenished some positions with some youth. Mike Evans is now gone. We'll see if some of the young players who they really like can step up. But I really like New Orleans. Again, a lot depends on Tyler Shuck. They're very confident in him. They're going to be a more tight end centric offense. They have 3 tight ends that they really like. And with Jordan Tyson, the rookie, suffering that significant hamstring injury that's going to keep him out for 2 months, they've got to kind of figure out their wide receiving crew. But their defense last year was top 10 in most metrics across the board. They made some changes. DeMario Davis is gone. They replaced him with Caden Ellis, who was in Atlanta after starting his career in New Orleans. A little bit more versatile of a player than DeMario in certain ways when it comes to pass rush and things like that. But I think the Saints have an opportunity to be the NFC South champions. And if Tyler Shuck continues to grow, they could be a very, very dangerous team.
Are we too dismissive of the Panthers? I know they finished the season with a losing record to win the division. I had some Panthers fans say to me that they're obviously looking at the upper trajectory of a team that won a division and won 7 games when not many people expected that last year. Maybe they can push on. They've done some really strong things defensively in free agency. Maybe they're still an unknown quantity within the division.
That's a great point because, again, adding someone like Jalen Phillips, who is just a stud pass rusher, very disruptive player, does have an injury history. And then Devin Lloyd at the inside linebacker, not so much of a downhill player, but a coverage linebacker, very, very smart guy. The defense should be improved, but that offensive line, they're down 2 offensive tackles. Right? A rookie may have to come in and start at one spot, but rookies come in the offensive line, they usually fare pretty well if they're up to snuff. But I think there's still a lot of wait and see with Bryce Young. This is a contract year for him to see if he can earn the big deal. He's been like good in preseason, but nothing where you're like, okay, he's taking that next step. But preseason is the ultimate liar as well. We can't sit there and make too many judgments off of preseason games, but the Panthers defensively should be better, but I think there's still a feeling that they've got some proving to do, and they've got some players who can do it. But again, they've all got to come together, and they've got to overcome against some of those injuries at their tackle spots on the offensive line.
I think arguably the biggest storyline of the week, Steve, is the Deshaun Watson saga in terms of him being announced as the starting quarterback in Cleveland. We did our own reaction show on Monday, and one of the guys made a very good point around what's the better scenario for Todd Monken? Is it that he's taking Sanders out of the team and bringing Deshaun Watson in during the season because Sanders hasn't met the expectations of what they need to win games? Or is it a better scenario for Todd Monken if he's 3 or 4 weeks into the season, Deshaun Watson isn't playing at a respectable level to maintain the position, and he brings in Sanders, and that's probably more receptive to the fan base. Is that something you think is in the logic behind this, or do you really believe that his entirety of his body of work over camp is what really won him the job?
I do think that scenario factored absolutely into this decision. And I'll say this because I have a lot of respect for Todd Monken, and he's very much like Bruce Arians and Mike Zimmer, 2 former head coaches who didn't get a head coaching job until they got to their 60s, right? This is the era of hiring the 35-year-old head coach. But here's someone who's paid his dues, done a really, really good job. It is my belief that Todd Monken would not put a player out there to be his quarterback who he didn't think was going to win ball games for him. If he got an order from Jimmy Haslam, hey, you have to pay Deshaun Watson because we're paying him, Todd Monken would tell Jimmy Haslam where to go, right? He would be like, Jimmy, look, I'm the head coach here. Let me make the football decision. So that's why I don't think there was that much pressure on him to play Deshaun Watson because of the finances and things like that. I just think Monken probably feels, let me go with the more experienced guy. We've got a lot of good pieces. They built a lot of good pieces around him. They upgraded their offensive line this offseason. They draft Spencer Fano, the tackle, with the first pick. Got 2 rookie wide receivers to go with Jerry Jeudy, and we know they've got some really good young defensive players. Jared First replacing Myles Garrett. But I just think the Deshaun Watson thing, to your point, if he doesn't play well, it's easier to say Shadour's our guy, and he's somebody we're looking forward to for the next few years, even though they're very much going to be in the quarterback market next year, regardless of what happens. I think Deshaun Watson could have a great year. They're still going to be in the quarterback market next year, just because of everything around that. So it'll be interesting to see, because that division is going to be real tough this year.
Yeah, you touched on there, like they've done such a really stellar job over the course of the last 24 months in terms of players they brought in the draft. We saw the success of some of the players last year. So many people feel they'll have same kind of results this year, and it puts them in a position to not necessarily to win the division, but to be, cause some uproar in terms of results. And that brings me to the other teams in the division, because it is quite a topsy-turvy division this year in terms of change. Many would have felt Zach Taylor was the one that should have been relieved of his services, but yeah, he remains as the in situ head coach with the Bengals. Where do you sit on this division? Because a lot of people again feel if Joe Burrow can remain fit this year, the Bengals are very much in play.
Yeah,
I've seen some suggest that this is the Ravens' time with Minter coming in as a new head coach, but not entirely sure that's the case. It feels like it's very open this year, and of course Pittsburgh with Mike McCarthy.
It feels more open because Cincinnati, for the first time in years, has committed the resources on defense. Right, they make the trade for Dexter Lawrence. They add some veteran players on the defensive line because they've tried to do the draft on defense and they've missed. Right, they have not found that star. So they're hoping that they can build a defense, and personnel-wise, it looks like a unit that can keep teams below 30 points, because we know that offense can hang 35 to 40 on anybody on any given Sunday. And I really like Cincinnati this year. I think their team is really, really stacked. It is just a matter of durability and health for them. When it comes to the Ravens, I'm a big Jesse Minter fan, and I love his staff bringing Anthony Weaver in to be his defensive coordinator. Remember, Anthony Weaver used to be the defensive line coach there back when Nnamdi Madubuike had the 13 sacks. That defensive front was absolutely monstrous. So I like what they're doing there. They've got some things to fix on their offensive line. Remember, they took some hits in free agency, losing Tyler Linderbaum at center, and now a young man who's competing for that job is out for the year. So, they've got to figure out their center and then both guard situations, even though they drafted someone who could probably come in and play that. But at receiver as well, you have Zay Flowers, who's a stud, right? But then is Rashad Bateman going to step up? Can maybe some of these younger players that they've drafted? There's been a lot of excitement about the tall wide receiver they drafted out of USC, who's had a really good training camp. Then they've got, tight ends, Mark Andrews and a couple other guys. Like, how is that going to work? They don't have the depth. Declan Doyle, the new offensive coordinator everyone's excited about, he's a tight ends guy. His lineage is coming up through Sean Payton with tight ends. Can he develop some of these younger players on the roster? So more questions around the Ravens that we've seen. The team we haven't really talked about is the Steelers. Like, they're getting no buzz.
Whatsoever. Nothing at all.
None. And they're a team, again, there's so much, they're such an aged team that if they stay healthy, they're going to be really good. But where's the explosiveness, right? On both sides of the ball. That's like, can TJ Watt regain the form? Can Alex Highsmith regain the form? They just paid Nate Herbig, a third outside linebacker, starters money. They've committed, a lot of money to that position. Jalen Ramsey is just coming back off of PUP. Joey Porter's upset because he hasn't gotten paid. So we'll see how things take shape initially for the Steelers. But if they stay healthy, they might be a problem. Aaron Rodgers might be able to go out with a bang.
Do you think it's Steelers they win, their success is ultimately down to defense? I know they brought in a wide receiver, Bernard, in the second round, and he looks like a lovely selection. I did say at the time when the draft, sometimes you find a way to get a player that you don't expect. Like they wouldn't have taken a wide receiver in the second round if Mackay Lemon had fallen, or that selection had went through before the Eagles leapfrogged them.
And then they added Michael Pittman.
Take Michael Pittman in. Like they have players there offensively, but I look at the running back room. Can one take the full load? It just strikes me if they're going to have success, ultimately it'll be down to their defense.
Yeah, and again, those guys have to stay healthy. T.J. Watt, he's been banged up. He hasn't been what he's been. Alex Highsmith, banged up, hasn't been what he's been. I mean, Cam Hayward was a monster last year at age 36, 37. You can rely on him, but everyone else has got to step up. And again, they've got some changes on the defense. They've got some really good coaches on that side of the ball. Joe Witt, who was in Washington, takes over that secondary. If he can get Jalen Ramsey and those guys to get back in form over the next 2 weeks, he'll tighten that group up, and they'll take the ball away. Any defense Joe Witt's been a part of, they take the ball away. So that's something to look out for.
A lot of Steelers fans in Ireland, obviously they played here last year. They're going to play in Paris, which isn't too far from Ireland this year, against the Saints, the first ever game to play in Paris. You touched on cornerback there with Joey Porter, and there's some speculation around him being traded. And it kind of brings me to Christian Gonzalez. It's lingering on, and it feels like it's getting very close to the season. Do you feel this is one that's just going to evolve and move into the season and the contract will get resolved at some stage, or do you think there's a kind of a deadline leading up to the season?
No, they'll get it done just because, he's got more time on his contract. At some point, they'll get it done. Maybe it's just the structure of, does he want more upfront money? Does he want money in certain years? Usually when it's something like this, it's a structure of when cash payments will be dispersed and things like that. So even though Devin Witherspoon at Seattle set the bar, and even though his agent represents Christian Gonzalez, you thought that would be the form and they can just put $1 on top of it and that would be done. But clearly there's something with the structure of the deal that he wants changed, because we know what the money is. It's going to be an average of $33 million a year. We know that part.
Where do you see on the Patriots going to the new season? I think people have lofty expectations of the Bills. They're going to bounce back and win the division and be, a serious contender in the AFC. And the Patriots, I wouldn't say they're going, quietly about their business. Like they've just come off a really successful season. They're the AFC champions, but yet people are looking at their schedule at the start of the season and say it's not conducive to them getting off to a fast start. They had the soft schedule last year, and I know Patriots fans get a little bit disgruntled by that because the games are there to be won. They won the games, they went into the playoffs, and they made themselves to the Super Bowl. So it's a bit disingenuous to say they're not going to be ready for the season and the schedule doesn't, lend to them winning and coming back again. Is this a viable conversation to the team? No one expects us to win again. Let's go at it again.
Well, I mean, look, they're going to be tough. And the one aspect of that team we don't talk about enough is their defense. That's the only reason they made it to the Super Bowl last year, because they did not play well offensively in the playoffs. Drake May did not play well all the way through the playoffs. He played okay. Then we saw how much they struggled in the Super Bowl because he had some injuries on the offensive line. They've got to make sure that part is set. So as long as the defense continues to play the way it did, they're going to be in games. Let's not forget they added A.J. Brown at wide receiver.
Yep.
Yeah, you lose a 1,000-yard guy in Stephon Diggs, but getting a horse like A.J. Brown, I mean, my God, he's a great, great player with a great young quarterback. That's going to open things up. So they're going to be a very, very good football team. We'll just see week to week because, they're going to catch everybody's shot. It's going to be a little bit differently this year. But we'll see week to week how solid they are. I like them more than Buffalo in the division. I know everyone says Buffalo is going to bounce back. I know Buffalo got DJ Moore, but I don't see where they're necessarily better on the defensive side of the ball. I know there's been a coaching change in Buffalo. A lot of people, the breath of fresh air. We kind of needed that. So maybe that's enough. We know Josh Allen's one of the best players we've seen in football in the past 30, 40 years. But is that enough to get by a Patriots team that's going to be improved and a Jets team that should be a little bit better than what they've been?
You're giving Jets fans hope that's
well,
that'll be well received.
Don't hang on to that hope too long. That bar is not made of oak wood. That bar is made more of soft bamboo.
Well, what I would suggest with the Jets is I feel they've had a really strong offseason. I know it's on paper and it's not necessarily transitioning to the field. We'll obviously see how things play out at the start of the season, but they did really well in the draft to get a wide receiver, to get a tight end. David Bailey looks like an immediate impact type of player. I think the GM, they've obviously got a lot of draft picks next year and puts them in a strong position for the quarterback in a draft heavy quarterback situation next year. You would think that there's a situation where they can win a lot more games based on what they had last year.
Yeah, and I think the stability of Geno Smith at quarterback should help. But it's not like the Jets have been bereft of talent before. There's just something in the water going on up there where they've got to change the whole mentality. And maybe this is the team and this is the year where they can do that. Again, I think they've got the talent. They're going to be a tough out week to week, but can they be consistent? If they get consistent with it, again, like you talked about, some of the edge rushers they have on defense, some of the young talent they have on defense, they could be really good. But that's a team that's got to kind of just show some consistency before I think we're going to get any type of buy-in.
I just want to flip it out west because Seattle Seahawks have probably looked at the offseason and say, you know, a lot of people are suggesting the Rams are a standout team to win the West and win, potentially even go all the way and win the Super Bowl again in their own stadium in SoFi come next February. You touched on the Witherspoon contract there. The Seahawks, I would imagine, I know they've lost some players and it's kind of becomes an enormous successful team who wins the Super Bowl, tends to lose some of their players off their roster. But I would imagine they're looking at this going into a season where the Rams have to go to Melbourne very early this season. How are they going to the impact of that coming back, a challenging situation like that? Should the Seahawks be worthy favourites of the division, or is it right to think, bearing in mind all the players that the Rams have done, and the off-season additions the Rams have made, that they should be worthy favourites going into the season?
If people are not thinking the Seattle Seahawks are going to be back in it, then they are sadly mistaken. I mean, the one thing, like you look at the Seahawks talent, that's young talent. I mean, Leonard Williams is like the really only, if you want to even call him long in the tooth, veteran on this team. That is a very young football team, and they are loaded. They have got depth at nearly every position. Yes, they lost Kenneth Walker, but they love Jadarian Price, right? The running back out of Notre Dame, who's more familiar with the scheme that they have in terms of a runner. Remember, a lot of stuff Kenneth Walker did was in the screen game and a lot of stuff outside. They love Jadarian Price big time because he's got the vision to do that cutback stuff that they like to do. They're going to run the same scheme. Brian Fleury comes over, runs the same scheme as Clint Kubiak, who's now the head coach of the Raiders. We know Cooper Kupp and JSN, and these guys are good. You know, AJ Barner, the tight end, he's one of the best players no one talks about. He's coming off of a procedure, but he's going to be fine. That dude's a horse, man. And so both sides of the ball, they're loaded. And when I was up there, you know, this summer, and I asked them, like, well, what about, you know, the Rams loading up with Myles Garrett? Probably get, you know, Aaron Donald back. They got Trent McDuffie. Those dudes aren't losing any sleep. And it's funny, like in a year or two, that rivalry with the Seahawks and Rams has really turned into something ugly. It's come out of nowhere, and it is fierce. Those 3 games they had last year that were really, really close. Actually, the 3 games last year were really, really close. You know, the Rams hate that the 2-point conversion was Zach Charbonnet. He just kind of randomly picked up the fumble and got 2 points. The Seahawks felt that even the game with Sam Darnold threw 4 interceptions, they still should have won it. They missed a field goal at the end. Bad blood right there, you know. So I love that. I think the Rams on paper probably have more talent, but a lot of times these divisions, it's how you match up. It's why the Niners tend to beat the Rams. They just match up well for that individual matchup.
The Rams, when you look at what they've done, and you touched on it there, they brought in a lot of experienced players, like 2 cornerbacks to have Super Bowl experience coming over from the Chiefs. There's the Myles Garrett trade. Obviously, people felt he was worthy of playing in a team that's recognised as a worthy favourite to go all the way. And the Aaron Donald storyline isn't going away. Do you feel that they've looked at it from their point of view as, we were so close last year, we should have beaten, they'll argue they should have beaten the Seahawks on that Thursday night game where there was a significant comeback. There's the NFC Championship game where they were very close at the end. Do you feel that they've looked at it and say, we're so close, we just need 2 or 3 players to put us over the top?
Yeah, especially at cornerback. I mean, their corners got really taken advantage of against the Seahawks in some of those games. And then you add a player like Myles Garrett. Think about how many sacks this guy has achieved on a team that never led in the fourth quarter. I mean, the Browns were rarely leading in the fourth quarter. Other teams just ran the ball on them. Now teams are going to be throwing the ball 15 times a game in the fourth quarter where Myles Garrett can get after it. He may shatter his own sack record. Plus they've got nothing but a bunch of all-stars on the defensive line with them. I mean, Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, you put Aaron Donald out there, you have Byron Young at the other edge. That's a 10-sack guy. So they're loaded again, having Trent McDuffie and getting Jalen Watson on the other side. Plus they've Quentin Lake, their safety. He's very much like a Nick Eamon-Wari type. So They built their defense much like Seattle, whereas Devin Weatherspoon can play outside corner, inside corner, and kind of what they call the overhang player, which is like an outside linebacker. They've got that in McDuffie. And then with Nick Eamon-Worry, all the stuff he does, they've got that in Quentin Lake. So now they feel they've got all these variables. They don't have to substitute and tip what they're doing to the offense. So that's where they feel that they've got more of a defensive edge than they've had for a while. So those two teams are going to be in it, but we can't, if the Niners, and it's the ultimate if, can stay healthy, they're going to have something to say about that NFC West as well.
Yeah, let's bear in mind the Niners were only one game away from potentially having that one seed if they hadn't had beaten the Seahawks on that Saturday night game in late December. Last year I asked you for a sneaky team, a team that people aren't talking about, and some team that everyone has high expectations for, and it's not going to transfer to a successful season. I'll put you on the hot spot again. I won't shame you with last year's selections, don't worry. But
I was about to say, who did I pick? I'm sure they were well off.
I'll have to go back over the old nose.
I'm sure I didn't pick the Seahawks and Patriots.
I don't think anybody did, Steve, bearing in mind the odds that were available at the start of the season. Are the Bears a sneaky one? Because a lot of people are suggesting the Bears are now primed to go and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. It's been so long for Bears fans. They were close to an NFC Championship game, just came out the wrong side of that Rams team. And everyone feels like they're going in such the right direction with Ben Johnson. And I look at where the Lions were last year, even though they lost the NFC Championship game, against the 49ers, everyone felt they were ready for that final push, and it didn't transpire because of a number of reasons. But is that similar to the way the Bears are this year?
Well, the Bears, I think, are potentially sneaky team because we know offensively they should be fine, but they've lost some pieces on defense, and there's clearly a concern how much pressure they're going to be able to get on the quarterback. And you've heard recently Ben Johnson say people are underestimating our defensive interior and things we're going to be able to do up front. Like, we're going to be good. If they can be good, I think Caleb Williams is going to take another step. I think some stuff he's going to go have with the wide receivers. If Luther Burden can stay healthy, we know they've got two running backs who can really play, and a good offensive line. They've got a shot. That division is going to be very interesting to me. I think the Packers are the best team in that division, especially once Micah Parsons comes back defensively. But all four of those teams, I am not discounting the Minnesota Vikings at all because Brian Flores is always going to be able to dial some stuff up defensively. And if Kyler Murray can stay upright for 17 games, he is one hell of a quarterback. When you look at Arizona, when he played, and he played consistently, was able to be healthy, he was a heck of a quarterback. He was a winner. And that's something you really can't say about the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, it's tough there. And so I think that division's wide open. I do think the Bears are a team that are dangerous, but I think the Packers are probably, in my opinion, the favorite to win it, especially with tight end Tucker Kraft coming back. When he went out last year, that's when everything fell apart. So I think with them coming back and what they like to do, that's going to help things out.
And a team that you feel may drop off from where we were last year? Anything spring to mind?
I'll
throw one at you. I'll make it easier for you. The Broncos, like a lot of people felt last year, they slightly overachieved because they won some games where they didn't really play that well. Made the AFC Championship game. Some people feel that the Chiefs are going to have a bounce back year and it may not be the Broncos coming and winning that division. Do you think that's a fair piece?
No. I think Denver's coming out of the AFC. They should have come out last year if Bo Nix weren't hurt. To me, the Chiefs might be a team like last year, they didn't make the playoffs. I think it's going to be a little tough sledding for them this year. I mean, their situation at wide receiver,
it's an unknown.
Who's their threat? Like, who's the guy where teams have to say we have to double team? They've got to prove it. They lost their entire secondary just about on defense, right? Can that defensive line get back to generating pressure? That's a team to watch. Now, we know Patrick Mahomes is always going to have them in contention. So I'm not discounting, but that's a team to watch. Like, they may have to do a reset after the season with some of their personnel on a significant scale. Look, I think a team that could step back a little bit. I don't want to say the Houston Texans because I think they're good, but their situation at wide receiver scares me.
Yeah,
and I think some teams like Jacksonville are on the come up. I think the Colts have an opportunity to be pretty good if Daniel Jones stays healthy. But I'm going to say if I really have a team that was on the top that could step back, it would be New England just because the schedule is going to be tougher. But I still think they're a potential playoff team. The AFC is so much so wide open, but I still think they're a potential playoff team.
I think that's the beauty of the NFL, Steve, as we close out. Every year there's about 3 or 4 different teams that find their way into the playoffs from the year. That's why it's so exciting and why we look forward to it so much, and we miss it during the off-season. Steve, you're always very good and accommodating with your time and coming on the Irish NFL show. And we really appreciate it. The content that you do for NFL Network is sublime. So we look forward to having you back on and maybe seeing you out there in SoFi this coming February when the Super Bowl takes place out in LA.
Well, that'd be great. Thanks so much for having me on. And again, I love the Irish fans over there too. So salute to all of you all.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.